Alright everybody, guess what? Unrested's back, another JFAQ. This is number 9 here on Facebook, guys. This Facebook thing, working out great for me. I've been posting the link to my Facebook, my Unrested JFAQ Facebook, every time down in the description. You can check it out. If you haven't already added me on there, go ahead and add me and state your own question to be able to see it on camera. I have had more friend ads probably in the last week than I've had the entire time I've had that profile, all because of this JFAQ on Facebook. It's awesome. And I've got to say thank you to everybody. You guys make these videos. Even if I seem perturbed, mad, or upset that you've asked the same question again and again, I love all the questions that I get from here, and I appreciate anybody who takes time to put them on there. Like I said, you guys make the channel, so I can never ever take you guys for granted. Let's begin. Josh says, I am coming to Japan in August for 2 months. I will be looking for a job while I am there. I have heard of gaijinpot.com as a really good website to get a resume out there, but would you recommend other ways of getting yourself out there? Well, there is also other websites. There is Ohio Sensei, and there's also, if you're in my area, Kansai Flea Market. Other ways you might want to get yourself out there is kind of just the same stuff you would have in your own country. I mean, networking is always great. Talk to people who are already in jobs. If you have friends out here already, ask them if there's any openings available. But other than that, it doesn't really differ too much from how you would do it back in the States. Rem says, I've seen there's a shop where you can buy jumbo takoyaki. If you don't know what takoyaki is, it's octopus balls. And I don't mean the actual balls of an octopus. I mean, it's a doughy ball with octopus pieces inside. It's very delicious. Absolutely scrumdiddlyumptious. And she's asking that she's heard about a jumbo takoyaki place. This is very true. It's 4 times bigger than a normal one. I've never actually measured it, so maybe it is. Maybe she's right. But there are jumbo takoyaki shops out there. The ball is about this big. It's like a Pokeball, like this size. Hold on, I got a Pokeball right here. Of course, a nerd like me would. It's about this size. She's asking how does it taste, right? That's what you're saying. How much do they cost, and how good do they taste? They cost, gosh, I don't remember. I think I paid about 400 yen for one. How does it taste? It's not as good, honestly, as the original takoyaki recipe. I would say probably because you're chewing through a lot more dough to get down to that squishy octopi. Other than that, I would still suggest you try it out if you're really interested. It's worth the money, I'd say. Danny says, since Japan and the US have history together, how do people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki think of Americans visiting or living in that area? That's a good question, Danny, and actually I have something very interesting to tell you. Every school I've ever taught at, as far as junior high schools, go on a trip to Hiroshima to learn about the nuclear bomb, and when they go on that trip, for their English class, they're given a set of English questions to ask any foreigners that they see there about some opinions that they have. And I don't know about Tokyo, but every school I've ever taught at in Osaka has the same set of questions. And it's kind of like questions about peace for the future. And what are your views on, like, what do you think about disarming every nuclear bomb? And then they'll have them sign a petition at the end to disarm every nuclear bomb in the world. And I think it's a really, really great thing to do. It keeps people aware of what happened. It doesn't point any blame. It doesn't say, you're an American, why did you do this? You know, it's not like that. But it's keeping people aware of what happened, keeping people aware of the problem it still has, and keeping people aware that there's a petition to get rid of all the nuclear arms in the world, which I think would be great, but I don't ever see it happening in my lifetime. Good question, Danny. Benjamin says, number 1. What are 3 things you would tell your prior self 7 years ago? I've been here 7 years, so he's asking, what would you tell Unrested when he got fresh off the boat here in Japan? I would tell him, study Japanese harder, you bastard, because I'm still not happy enough with my Japanese level. I would also say, talk, don't read when it comes to Japanese. Talk. And I think that was one of the biggest problems I had, is I thought if I just read every book possible on Japanese, I would become fluent, and that's not true at all. You've got to talk, 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 talk. I would also say to my first self that don't work at Nova because it went bankrupt in the first 2 months. 2, this is a more silly one, but in an old Tokyo Kuni video, if you guys don't know who that is, it's a more famous J-vlogger than myself. he captures a salaryman on film casually wearing an umbrella atop his head, like an umbrella cap, whilst in line for coffee. My question being, have you ever experienced any bizarre or amusing encounters? Oh yes, let me tell you. Okay, some of the strangest characters. I mean, I have seen a lot of strange characters. It's Japan, and people always think, well, Japanese people don't ever get really that crazy because they're very conservative. But as you guys know, all those weird fetishes come out in the newspaper and stuff like that, eyeball licking. Those are the minority, but there are some freaks and geeks out there in the city because we're deep in the urban parts and anything goes. The weirdest character, and I've seen this guy a couple times, I don't know what his deal is. He's an old man, right? Really old, like he must be like 80 plus. And he dresses up as a woman, which that's totally okay. I have no problem with that. But when he dresses as a woman, it's like as like Little Bo Peep, you know, lowly goth type stuff. And his wig is like bright pink, like super bright pink. And on top of that, he pushes around a baby cart. But there is no baby inside that cart. Instead, there is Nino from Arashi on a magazine cover and then put in like a plastic, like, how would you say, like a keep-safe plastic wrap. And he keeps his, like, it's like a profile photo of him on a magazine in a plastic wrap inside of a baby cart. And he's got like toys and stuff around it to keep it like safe and cared for, and then he pushes that around everywhere he goes. So that's kind of different. It's unique. How about we put it that way? Hey, you know what? More power to that guy for staying different at his age and keeping it unique. Rick says, how did your friends, family, and parents react to your decision to move to Japan? They were pretty surprised. My mom was not the happiest about it. She's okay with it now, but she pretty much cried when I left. She was not happy about that. Did they try to guilt you out of leaving? My mom kind of did that. Sorry, Mom, it's true, but you kind of tried to give me a little bit of guilt trip there. She's kind of like, it's going to be so hard to survive. Don't leave me. I'm an only child, so I think she was dealing with some kind of like empty nest syndrome, even though I hadn't lived at home since I was 18. I think it was just kind of scary for her for me to be 12,000 miles away, which I understand, Mom. I understand now that I'm an adult and a parent myself. Okay, so that was a good question, Rick. Next is Ben. He's asked some questions before, Ben. Scott, have you ever slept at a 24-hour internet cafe? I've never slept at one, but I've been to many, and they are very enjoyable. You know what is awesome about internet cafes here? First of all, the internet speed's great. That's nice. They always have the air conditioning blasting in the summer, at least ones in Osaka do. And they have vending machines. How much do those vending machines cost? They are free. Free drinks the whole time you're there. You can just keep hitting the button as many times as you want. No one's going to stop you. You can take as many free drinks as you want of all different types of stuff, including melon soda, one of my favorite. So man, those things are awesome here. I love it. How much was the cost? They're pretty cheap. I've never stayed, like I said, I've never stayed at one for, you know, overnight or anything like that. I think the longest I've ever stayed at one is like 6 hours, and it was 1,500 yen, which is like about $14 or $15 in American dollars. David says, I know you mentioned in a very early JFAQ years ago that the TV in Japan wasn't that good. Would you say it's improved at all since then? I wouldn't say it's improved. I'd say due to the fact that I can actually understand some of it now, I enjoy it quite a bit more. And you know what else I think my problem was I couldn't figure out when the heck shows come on here. It's a little bit difficult. Number one, they don't go at an hourly interval. Like, you don't have like 9 o'clock show, 10 o'clock show. It's like weird times. It'll be like 9:14, next show, and then like you don't know if it's over because the way the credits roll in Japanese shows is kind of strange. Like, they're still talking and they're like really tiny at the bottom of the screen, like there's some kind of like, you know, shareholders readout, and you're like, wait, the show's over? Wait, I'm really enjoying this. So some of my favorite shows now are Beat Takeshi's Unbelievable, before and after. I like Best House 1, 2, 3. There's a bunch of good shows at nighttime in Japan. Now, daytime television and morning television isn't that bad. You got some really good news shows that keep you up to date. Daytime television, man, it is awful. I would not suggest you ever try to make it through a day of Japanese TV because it is boring. The crazy thing now is I watch a lot of kids shows because my kid watches them, and I'd have to say kids shows in Japan are high quality. They put a lot of work into like the artwork and the designs and the backgrounds and stuff. And there's one kids show here, I've got to film it sometime. It is a steampunk kids show that teaches kids about music. And I think it's the most brilliant idea ever. It is the most beautiful looking show you have ever seen. If you like steampunk or any kind of like cyberpunk type stuff, it is a cool show. I've got to get you guys a couple clips of it because it's such a cool show. Graham says, where are places that hold tea ceremonies? Well, there's like a bunch of places. One of my favorite that I went to was in Himeji Gardens. They have a tea house right in the middle that you can go to it. Have you attended one? Yes, I have. What is it like? It's as beautiful as you expect it to be. You get to see the whole ceremony. Maybe the only downside to it is you might not actually know how long one of those actually take. They take quite a long time if it's done properly. And if you're like sitting there waiting, and especially if like you start to get hungry, you're not going to be satisfied by that tiny like little cookie or sweet they give you with the tea. So maybe come there with a semi-full stomach. Zoe says, are there some places tourists should avoid? Okay, I guess this is kind of my opinion. Some people really love Roppongi, but I have heard so many bad stories from my friends living here about Roppongi up in Tokyo. There's a lot of scams that go on with people saying, hey, you want to meet some girls out here? Let me go take you to a place you can meet some girls and stuff. And of course, anybody with half a brain kind of understands, you know, this is probably a scam to begin with. But some people, you know, you have a few drinks, you want to be friendly, you're like, yeah, all right, I'm not going to be a jerk to this guy, I'll just follow him. If I don't like the place, I'll just leave, right? You're like, I can be nice without being a total freaking jerk. Don't do it. Be a jerk. If anybody comes up to you in Roppongi and is like, hey, let me take you to a cool club, or let me show you a club that I'm friends with the owner or something, don't go with anybody anywhere. Many, many friends I've had go there. They have one drink, like one drink, and their drink has been spiked because the ingredients to make roofies in Japan it's totally legal, all the ingredients. So people can make them, they'll put them in your drink. Boys or girls, I'm not saying you're going to get raped, but they are going to take your credit card and charge a bunch of stuff on it while you're conked out. Ask Tokyo Sam about what happened to his friend. The guy got knocked out by some roofies in his drink. They charged his card over $3,000. And I guess he was like in a zombie type state because they like took him to stores and stuff and made him pay for stuff. So he really got screwed and he could not contest the stuff that had been on there. Okay, good question. So Andre asks, Scott, has a man who lived in Japan for several years, is it hard for a person to make it a life out there if is not a native English speaker? Oh, okay. This is written a bit strange, but he said I'm not a native English speaker, so I've got to give this guy a break. Okay. He's saying, is it hard to make it out here if you're not a native English speaker? That really depends, man. Are you looking to teach English? Do you not speak any Japanese? Yeah, it would be hard if that's your goal. I have met many a person who first language is not English, but they do teach English because, man, it could be like your third language and you probably still speak better English than most Japanese people. But it would be a little bit harder. Is it impossible? No. You can definitely make it out here even as, you know, English as a second language. Emery asks, hi Scott, what are your favorite wasei-eigo words? Are there any that you thought were really strange or especially interesting when you heard them? I was kind of intrigued when I learned skinship. Okay, so I think what she's talking about here, wasei-eigo, Emery, I hope that's a girl's name, right, Emery? Wasei-eigo, what we usually call it here, we call it Nihongo-eigo, Japanese English. So the Japanese use a lot of loan words, and loan words means they've borrowed the word from another language and then turned it into a katakana word, but they've also kind of altered it. Like, of course, you've got convenience store. Well, that's konbini. That's konbiniantsu. It's been shortened down to konbini. That's it. So you can see that's not a Japanese word originally. It actually comes from an English background, but then it's been shortened and made into a Japanese word. Skinship, yeah, man, there are some weird ones, dude. I I think one of the funniest ones I heard recently is if people smoke too much, they say they have a smokersfface, like a smoker's face. Fashion point is a strange one. I didn't understand at first, but a fashion point is one part of your clothing that like you wear all the time. Like maybe you have a favorite hat, or like, for example, like I always show my tattoos when I dress up. Like I have to wear something where my tattoos are showing. That would be my fashion point. One of the weirdest ones, economy syndrome. Economy syndrome is if you're on a plane, they give you a seat that's too small and you get sick because you've been put into a claustrophobic situation. So that's actually a good question, Emery. I could actually make a whole JFAQ about this, and I should in the future. Megan says, I know you always mentioned and always get asked in every time you do a JFAQ about tattoos and how they are received at work and in public. But what about dyed hair? That's a pretty good question. No one's really asked that one too much. On natural colors, for example, purple or bleach blonde. Probably you could get away with bleach blonde if you're a foreigner. Now, if you get too crazy with the colors like purple or blue, you probably can't do that at most teaching jobs. But I mean, you know, if you get into some other kind of business here, like, I don't know if you guys know, but Tokyo Sam's in the porn business, I don't know if they would really care that much. You could probably, like, have a bunch of piercings and dyed hair, and they're not really going to care too much. It really depends on where you're working, just like it would in the States, I suppose. Patrick says, when do you spend your holiday? Do you mean, how do I spend my holiday? During the expensive Golden Week? Oh, okay. Never mind. When do you spend your holiday? During the expensive Golden Week, or are you waiting for a different opportunity? Sorry, Patrick, you did write that correctly. This is a good question. The reason Patrick is asking this is because things actually become more expensive during times off, like when everybody has off, like Golden Week or Oban or something like that here in Japan. They will make like airplane prices and like rental prices way higher. It's highway robbery, if you ask me, and I do try to stay away from that, but unfortunately it's pretty much the only time my wife and I both have this time off together, so I still pay for it and I still go. For example, Golden Week coming up in August here, I'm going to be going to, Oban, coming up this August, next month actually, I'm going to be going to a very, very small island off the coast of Okinawa, and it should be really interesting. I can't wait to make a video about it. Jared says, I'm wondering, is stand-up comedy popular in Japan? You want to Google this right now. Manzai. Okay? Super popular in Kansai area. Okay? That's Osaka comedians. They're called Manzai. Go look that up right now. Have you ever watched performances by places like the Tokyo Comedy Store? No, I don't live in Tokyo. And if so, would you recommend it? I've never actually gone to anything. I don't really have the time to go to shows or anything these days. Sunny says, or I'm sorry, is it Suni? Is it common for married couples in Japan to wear wedding rings on their left ring finger like we do in the States? Now it's more common. If you go to like a really old school Japanese couple, like back when they used to have arranged marriages and stuff like that, that tends to not exist, but I would say definitely like my wife and I's generation, that's pretty common to wear that. Justin says, do you think being a vegetarian, no meat, that includes fish, well that would be a pescatarian, in Japan is any harder than it is in America? Probably yeah, because they don't really list as many ingredients, and if you can't read Japanese, gosh, you don't know any ingredients on stuff. Tony says, hey, I hope my question about busking was made clear with the people commenting. Yes, it was, Tony. I finally understood after, and I don't blame you at all, Tony. I blame myself for not keeping up with the English language, as I used to be an English teacher. Non-demo guy, he also has videos on YouTube. You guys should check him out. Short shorts or short skirts? So which one do I like more on Japanese girls? Man, I love those short skirts, man. Pantyhose and short skirts on Japanese girls. Girls, you rock them here in Japan. Holy cow, man. Stay in this country for that alone. Huh. Alright, Xenia. Oh, wait. Ksenia says, my question is whether it's true that in Japan at discos, people really dance to the DJ. Do people really dance to the DJ? Yeah, like, they all face the DJ and dance to him. That's pretty common. Like, they just sway back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I heard this from a friend. It's true. Your friend is right. I mean, there's some clubs where people get wacky, but that's pretty common what your friend said. And another one is, are there English songs in karaoke places? Yes, there's just as many English songs. And guess what? Above them, katakana comes out so that they can try and mimic the pronunciation. And it sounds utterly awful if you try to copy that. It's actually pretty funny. Try singing Lady Gaga in katakana. It'll sound hilarious. Poker face. Karaoke places. Okay, also, I know you're from Osaka, but are there any bars or clubs you could recommend in Tokyo? Nah, I really can't. I've only been to bars and clubs like twice in Tokyo, and I don't remember what their names were or anything. Ricardo says, I know you said Japanese people listen to a variety of music, but how popular is American rap or hip-hop? Well, if people like rap or hip-hop in Japan, they definitely like the American version a lot more than the Japanese version, because Japanese rap and hip-hop is really, really bad. Okay? Now, some of you may love it, but man, listen to the group Zebra sometime, and you can hear what absolutely horrible Japanese rap sounds like. Dude, I'm sorry. I love a lot of Japanese music. There's some super awesome bands out here, but I'm sorry, Japan, but you cannot do rap. You can't. You can't. You can't act tough. You can't be like, man, I grew up so hard. Streets of Japan. The streets of Japan are not hard ever anywhere. Stephanie says, I know you get many dumb stereotypical questions about Japan from those of us who don't live there, but on the opposite end, do you ever get any of these from Japanese people? That's a good question. Yes, I do. I get some really stupid ones. Like, here's the one that every gaijin gets. Can you use chopsticks? Like, as if we don't have chopsticks in America. Can you speak Japanese? Even after you've spoken Japanese, like, nonstop to a person, they will ask, can you speak Japanese? You're just like, what, are you deaf? Like, what are some of the other dumb questions? I mean, you know, you get kids who ask you stuff, but you can't blame them. They're kids. They don't know any better. Are my eyes real? Like, am I wearing contacts? That's a freaking hilarious question. And then if I tell them, yeah, my eyes are for real blue, they're like, how is that possible? Like, how can you have blue eyes? I thought everybody's eyes are brown. Like, I'm saying kids ask this one. And I have to explain to them about, well, when a blue-eyed man and a blue-eyed woman love each other very much. Noda. You get it. Corey asks, have you ever played any Phantasy Star Online? Not since Dreamcast. And do you know if PSO2 is popular in Japan? Like, a lot of retro gaming, is that a retro game at this point? I really don't know anymore. A lot of retro gaming is super popular still in Japan. I mean, there's entire stores dedicated to it. Michael says, you mentioned in your last JFAQ that Japan is mostly atheist, so my question are, how many people in Japan generally believe in traditional Japanese religion? I would say it's kind of small at this point. My wife is actually a traditional Buddhist with Shintoist beliefs as well. And my brother-in-law is a Buddhist priest, so I actually have pretty close ties to the Buddhist temples around my area and out in Nagoya. Okay, so Japanese religion, does the decline of these systems seem linked to Western influence? Not at all, not at all. Also, to what extent are monotheistic religions like evangelical Christianity persecuted in Japan? Not at all. Like, people really couldn't give a hell, like, they couldn't give a shit or a fuck or anything about what religion you are. You could, like, openly worship Satan on the street or declare Agamemnon your god, and they would just be like, well, whatever, do it, have fun, I don't care. It seems it would be hard for any genuinely religious people, regardless of spiritual beliefs. Not at all, man. People are really like, as far as religion goes in Japan, they'll do what you will. As long as you don't try to convert them or something. If you try to proselytize to a Japanese person, they will think you're a weirdo. And guess what? There actually is a form of Buddhism that proselytizes, and they think even those people are weirdos. So just, you know, do whatever you want, worship whatever you want, be whatever you want. I don't mind, and neither do the Japanese. Just don't proselytize. Okay, what's up? Day 2. I didn't finish those questions the first day, so I'm sitting down to finish all the way through JFAQ239, and we'll begin with Travis here, who says, How often do you see people on mopeds? Pretty often, but even more often I see them on scooters. Ryan says, since Japan has a very non-theistic country for most of its life, how has its lack of religious force affected their standards? Well, if anything, their standards are way above a lot of those in other countries, so I would say it hasn't affected them at all. If anything, it's improved them. Such as in one video I heard that since there isn't a religion, demonizing things like sex isn't such a big deal for younger people. Yeah, there's no such thing as demonizing all this different stuff. Of course, they worry about STDs and stuff like that like any normal country would, and they'll teach about that in their health classes, but things like, for example, just to give you a small example, when I was an art teacher in America, if I drew a monster for a kid, I had to be worried that a parent would be like, why are you drawing demons for my kid? If I draw a monster for a kid in Japan, their mom and dad both say, that's awesome that you drew him a monster. And that's all it is, it's just a monster. So there's some really great ways that not having religion here influences this place, and that's one of the reasons I really like Japan. Lewis says, what do the schools in Japan do to help kids with learning disabilities? For example, dyslexia. What support would the student get from the school? Are they discriminated in schools because they have learning difficulty? Also, do the parents have to pay for any support, or is it free? Well, if we're talking about a public school, you're not going to have to pay for anything more than I think the uniforms and the books, and even those are super cheap. Even some schools won't even make you pay for that. You can just come in normal clothes if you're like in a really dirt poor area. As for kids with learning disabilities, they do take them in for some special needs classes. I would say usually some of those are a little more severe than just simple things like dyslexia. Even I myself had dyslexia. I still have ADD. Those I don't really see as massive learning disabilities, but people with those would still be put into classes, even with, you know, kids of all ranges and levels, from your highest level kids even to some who are really physically and mentally challenged through elementary school. When you get into places like junior high school and high school, that's not as common. Usually at that point, Japan actually has a system where they give a special needs person, and I'm talking extreme special needs, someone who's kind of like a life coach, and they teach them like a simple pathway to a job and to their house, and the government actually hooks them up with a very simple task job, such as putting together toys on an assembly line or something like that. Vani, did I say that right? Maybe Vanny asks, Scott, you said you are not good with kanji, but how many kanji do you really need to know for reading manga in Japanese? That depends on how complicated the manga is. For example, I can grab almost any manga off of like a konbini shelf and read it with no problem. Now, if we were going to get into like something super complicated, like for example, a manga based on military or Japanese history, I probably wouldn't know what any of the kanji meant because it would be so unique to that lexicon. Ashia says, hey Scott, here comes my question. I watch other J-vloggers and heard that Japan's hospital are really creepy, as we see in Japanese horror movies. Is it true? And have you experienced any other horror stuff? Are the hospitals creepy? The hospitals are sometimes old. The hospital like my son was born in was not creepy at all. It was pretty nice. It was a woman's hospital. It was really pink. I think I understand what these people are saying. There are some older, dilapidated hospitals that just don't look like you'd really want to go there. They look like an old Sawbones type place. And, but I mean, it's not like, you know, Siren, you know, if you've ever played that video game Siren, it doesn't look like the hospital's out of that. It's not that super creepy. You know, you don't have like nurses trying to hit you with canes like it's Silent Hill or something. Okay, Joseph says, will you ever start 2.5 Majiaba Yatsura again? We've talked about this possibly, but we're going to possibly have a different form to it in the future. What was the reason for it being defunct? As I've said before, we were both too busy. Sam works a totally different job now, and I have 2 kids and work over 60 hours. That's 60, not 16 hours a week. So we don't really have a lot of time for that, unfortunately, because you have to match the same hour of your day. Caleb says, for a long time now, I've heard you mention that the dialect in Osaka is different from the dialect that most people learn in textbooks. Most textbooks have Kanto dialect. which would be more of a Tokyo dialect. Yeah, same thing. Are there books that teach specific dialect, or perhaps books to help differentiate? There's a book called Koloku Kanzai, and you can buy that one. It has a lot of phrases that are common to this area. There's a few other ones too, like there's one called Japan Uncensored, but most of the Japanese in there is so old that you would never use it in real life. Like if you said it, people would be like, are you like 100,000 years old? Because no one says that in Japanese anymore. Cal says, I was too late for JFAQ8, so here it comes. I'm not sure if you have shared this in your previous videos, but do you have a motto? My motto, I don't know if I personally have a motto. My friend Benny had a motto that I always liked, and he always said, you never get out of life alive. No one gets out of life alive. I always thought that was a good saying, so I guess I kind of stole that in a sense. Also, do you have a favorite Japanese saying? How does it go? If I'm correct, I always get this mixed up with Hana and Mimi. Hana kuso, me kuso warai. It's like your nose boogers are laughing at your eyes boogers, which is kind of like the pot calling the kettle black. It's the equivalent to that. Hypocritical situation. Andrea says, I know you have talked about table manners before in your videos, but I was in China last year and found out that apparently if you stick your chopsticks in your rice and leave them there, it's a pretty bad symbol since it means someone has died. What he's talking about is at a Japanese funeral, or perhaps a Chinese funeral, I don't know, I've never studied anything about China. When someone's died, you light 2 incense sticks and you stick them into a bowl of either it's like fine rocks, sand, or ash, and they burn away, and it's kind of like a blessing over the body or the cremated remains. And I guess it does mimic that in a sense, and I have doorbell that fucks everything up. That was the Aquafina guy just came in, so I'm gonna go ahead and just continue with him in the background because I need to finish this. It was too late for JFAQ8, so here it comes. What's your motto? Your favorite Japanese saying? Just did that one. Okay, so we were talking about how the chopsticks in rice looks like burning incense. Well, yeah, that's bad. Don't do that. And don't move bowls from one part of the table to another with chopsticks, because that's something you only do in a funeral. You move the urn that has the ashes in it. I gotta close the door.
30分ぐらいやりますね。これね、スポーツドリンクと、あとこれは安全セーフティーのしおりと、これはアンケートなんですけど、ちょっと書いていただいていいですか？はいはい、いいです。30分ぐらい。はいはい、それいいです。
Let's see here. Okay, I know this might be a random question, but have you heard or known about pen spinning? It's quite popular in Japan. Yes, quite a few high schools I've worked at, that is very popular, and kids do some amazing stuff with that. Kyle says, as an individual, how do you see Japan's economy, good or bad or improving? I would say right now it's getting a little bit better with Abenomics, but if you ask the common salaryman, they're going to tell you, no, it's not so good. Miki says, I was laughing at all your previous videos. Thank you for laughing at them, that's good. Anyway, do you still go out to parties and clubs? Not so much now that I'm a father of 2. Have you been to Omise and Kyabakura? That's like cabaret. So that's kind of like the equivalent to like stripping in America. And I have not been to that yet. I would still go sometime. I'm sure my wife won't even care if I did. Andrew says, what is the single greatest meal you have ever had in your time in Japan? The best meal I have ever had? Probably, I don't know, that's a good question. You know what, I'll have to get back to you on that one. Tyler said, what is the most popular or most wanted career field in Japan? Of everybody? Probably lawyers or doctors, just like any country, I guess. You know, the ones that pay the most, engineer, lawyer, doctor. And Tyler also says, do most people own a car in Japan? Most people in the countryside own a car. Probably a lot of people in the city do too, but probably it's not as handy to own one because it gets to be bottleneck traffic all the time. Are electric cars popular? Yes, they are. Laura says, hi Scott, I wanted to ask you some questions. One, I wanted to know is the opinion of Japanese people about, what is the opinion of Japanese people about the Sea Shepherd? They hate it. Pretty much one of their biggest qualms is other countries also go whaling, but Australia doesn't want to attack them. Look, I'm staying out of this. I'm not taking any side, so don't throw me all kinds of hate in there. I know this is a sensitive subject. I'm just saying what a lot of Japanese say here. They're talking about, you know, Finland does it, Iceland does it. How come those ships don't get attacked? Is it because they're white people? I don't know. I'm not saying I agree with that or I disagree with it. You can flame me if you want. It's going to go completely over my head and I'm going to ignore it. I stay out of this kind of stuff. A while ago, I saw a documentary called The Great Happiness Space. I have also seen that one. If you guys have not seen that, I highly suggest you watch that. It's about hosts and hostesses in Japan. The host club and the men who work there... Wait, what did it say? It's about male prostitutes. Okay, yeah. Not male prostitutes, about hosts. None of them are prostitutes. None of them have sex. Did you really watch this one? Are you sure? Do they have a good or bad reputation? Mostly a bad reputation. They're pretty annoying. As you see in that video, they try to get people to go to their host bar and hang out and drink with them, which they have to pay a lot of money to do, and it's kind of just annoying. Most girls don't want to do that. Number 3, last, J-Rock is growing more and more popular around the world, as they are. These artists there, ex-Japan and Vamps, they are popular or things from the past? Are they popular or things from the past? Ex-Japan's, I mean, pretty popular still, but I mean, aren't most of those guys dead from suicide? Andreas says, yes, it's the same. Oh wait, you're answering somebody else's question in the middle of my JFAQ, and that does not help me when I'm trying to pour through these questions. Jordan says, I hope this isn't offensive or controversial, but are there Japanese versions of the weeaboos for Western cultures such as America? Yeah, I'm sure there actually are Western otaku who are really into stuff. Mostly you would see it connected to an aspect of Western culture, for example, sports, or maybe a favorite cartoon, or someone who really loves like Disney. That's pretty popular. Or Snoopy for some reason is popular. Stitch is also popular, and they even have like a Japanese Stitch version cartoon, which is kind of strange and it's not very good. Zachary says, what is the least amount of knowledge of Japanese language and culture you have seen someone move to Japan with? I've seen people move here with 0 of each. How did they do? Well, they did so-so. I mean, if they got here and didn't know anything, but then took on the culture and took on the language, they did well. If they decided to stay at 0, they didn't do so hot. Isha says, I was wondering how cancer patients or survivors are treated in Japan. I guess like the same they would be treated in the Western world. I mean, they're not despised or hated or anything, but, you know, people are happy that they've made it, especially with bald heads. I mean, you know, people still feel empathy for that situation. They're not going to be like, why is your head bald or something. I know in America most people don't ask and just assume since I'm bald, but is it the same in Japan? Yeah, people are not going to ask you about that. They'll listen to you if you want to tell them about your situation, but that would be deemed like way too personal to ever ask anybody anything about that. Louise says, second and last question for me, has an anime ever made you shed tears like crazy? Have you ever seen Grave of the Fireflies? Anybody who's seen that is crying like crazy. I don't know, I hope you guys can hear me. This guy's like banging stuff around in my house right behind me. Don't worry, he can't understand anything I'm saying. What are some of your favorite Japanese snacks? Tamago Gaki Gohan's probably one of my favorite. Hana says, first of all, sorry about my last question. I didn't know it was answered. I don't remember what your last question was. Don't worry too much about it, Hannah. My other question is, what is your favorite thing to do when you go to festivals? And are you going to go to Tenjin Matsuri? Tenjin Matsuri, you know how many different Matsuris there are around my area? There's probably like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 around just my area every month during summer. So I don't know where that one is. If it's in Tokyo, I'm definitely not going. It's impossible. The Matsuri I'll probably go to is Shitenoji Matsuri, and that's probably about it. It's pretty close to my house. Sarah says, first, thanks for adding me. I like your videos because they are realistic. Okay. How convenient would it be to own a bicycle in Tennoji? It would be very convenient. It would work out pretty well, especially if you don't want to take trains and want to save a little bit of money. Lo asks, have you watched Sword Art Online? No, I have not. Robert says, I know you have gone over which sports are and aren't popular in Japan, but I was wondering if Wimbledon is televised in Japan. I really actually don't know that. Maybe perhaps on cable it would be, but I don't think NHK has that. Tennis is only slightly popular here. I wouldn't say it has a huge following. There are some famous Japanese tennis players. Christine says, I'm currently in school for my master's in library science, maybe 2 years away from completion. Oh my god. Okay. I will be closer to 30 than 20 when I finish. In your experience, is there a cutoff age that is deemed unacceptable? No, I mean, I've seen guys here in their 50s still teaching, so I don't know if you want to still be doing that at 50, but I mean, I came here when I was 27, so I really wouldn't worry too much about being 30. One other question. I have a friend who hails from Shanghai and lives there part-time. So much information. And I know when she is in China, she has no access to her FB account or Facebook account. Wow, that sucks. But are there any foreign websites that are blocked in Japan? Not that I know of. If there is, and someone else there knows that, please post it in the comments. I'd be really interested to know that, but I don't think so. Kira says, your last name is Ackerman. I like it. Can you tell me its ethnic origin? From what I know, it's a German last name that comes from Ackerman, which means owner of acres, which is most likely from farmers. Is it Jewish or German? I'm just German, but some people have mistaken me for Jewish before, but I am not. Also, how many siblings did you have, and where were you in the birth order? I am Hitoriko. I am Wagamama Hitoriko. That means like a selfish only child. I'm an only child. I hope someone hasn't already asked this. I'm trying to catch up and watch all the previous JFAQs, but still have a couple. Okay. I try to do this for the last 7, 8, and first, but I am a 50-year-old male gaijin with a mohawk. How would I be looked at in public? Unapproachable, unacceptable, shunned, undateable, unemployable? Okay, so I would say unapproachable, no. Maybe a little bit intimidating in Japan. Unacceptable, by who? I mean, that's kind of vague. Shunned by who? Again, I mean, public in general, perhaps. Undateable, no. Unemployable, perhaps. I mean, how crazy is your mohawk? Are we talking like full, you know, old school rancid mohawk, like gutter punk? You know, if you do have stuff like that, which is fine. I mean, obviously I've got tattoos and piercings and my hair is kind of crazy sometimes too. I have no problem with that. But if you do have that stuff, are you willing to contain it? Are you willing to you know, change your hair to come to Japan? Are you willing to learn the skills that make you more valuable to a person than just what you look like and who you are? I mean, if that's stuff you're not willing to do, then I would say Japan's probably not the place for you. But if you can, then yeah, you could make it here. Miranda says, hi, I want to study abroad next summer in Japan and would like to know what would be some good reasons for going that I can tell my parents to convince them. You could say Japan's one of the safest countries in the world. Also, what are Japanese high schools like? I can do a whole JFAQ on that, so I'll do that sometime. I think I've kind of covered what they're like anyway. Okay, Larissa says, if your company doesn't have any money to pay volunteer teachers, artists, guests who spend longer than a day working with you, what is an appropriate way to thank them? If it's a Japanese person, usually like gourmet cookies or something like that, a gourmet food. You don't really need to do too much. Kira said, okay, of your wife and you, who is the more hot-headed or enforcer/expresser? Well, obviously me being gaijin, I do tend to express myself quite a bit more, but my wife has a temper sometimes, let me tell you. I think I'll stop it there, because I don't want to flare it up. Marco says, hey Scott, is tramping legal in Japan? Uh-oh, here we go. Another word I've never heard. Tramping. Tramping and busking. Tramping. You know, like the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear tramping is Lady and the Tramp. So is this like maybe acting out the Disney cartoon Lady and the Tramp on the street? Yeah, that's totally legal. You can do that. I hope I've answered your question. Next. Sandra says, what do you consider to be the coolest Japanese clothing brand? There's like quite a few, but I'd say one that's really cool but too expensive for me to buy
is probably Beams and probably Zara, and I like those both a lot, but they're way too expensive and I never buy them. Finally, last question, I've made it through. Anthony says, hey, Unrested, I'm here in Japan trying to eat a bodybuilding style bulking diet, yada yada yada. What he's saying is he doesn't have enough money because meat here is really expensive. Bro, let me tell you what you need to do. You need to eat a lot of fish. Fish here is not so expensive. You want to stay red meat and chicken, and you want to try and find turkey, which you won't find turkey anywhere, you need to stick to fish, all right? That's the only way you can go about it. If you want to bulk here in Japan, you're gonna have to be bulking on fish. I mean, the best thing you can do is try to mix stuff with it that's a little bit high calorie but still high in protein as well. Fish, fish, and fish. That's all I can tell you. Mix some eggs with it too, because eggs aren't that bad here. All right, guys, I made it finally. Until next time, I'm Unrested. This is JFAQ.